I'm Megan, and thanks for joining me, or perhaps coming back, because this is the second video that is yoga therapy techniques and massage, Marma massage for the fingers and the wrists, and this portion is about the wrist. And the last one I went through all of the bones of the hands, but just briefly I'm going to take Mr. Bones up here so you can see when we're dealing with the wrist that we basically have 8 bones. So we have what we call the carpals. That's right at the base of the wrist, and you can even touch those in your own wrist. And most people know the word carpals because of carpal tunnel syndrome. But we also tend to get things like tendonitis. There's lots of tendons holding holding our wrist together. And then the other 2 bones are the radial bone on the inside of the thumb side, and the ulna, which is on the little finger side. We'll start with movement of the left wrist. And if you only need to do one, you can cut out after the first hand. I'm going to do both. So what I'd ask you to do is take your left hand out and we're going to reach. But then we want to plug the upper arm bone like we're taking it into the shoulder blade so you feel the support of your upper back muscles. If this is not comfortable, then take your elbow down to your side or even rest your arm on a table. The other thing is you can extend and use your opposite hand to help support it because you want to be able to relax the shoulders. But one of the things you might find is doing these wrist movements, your shoulders will tighten, and that's a sign of some issues that perhaps that does happen in real life when you're trying to move your wrist. If it's limited in mobility, your shoulder will tighten. So the first one we're going to do is flexion of the wrists. Very simple, right? The wrist comes down, or the palm comes down, so we're compressing the front of the wrist, and we're putting tension on the back of the wrist. If you do a lot of yoga, this feels really good because we do a lot of weight bearing when we're the other way. So we start with the fingers open, and we're just doing this nice flexion. But notice all the muscles through the arm. So if you do have tendonitis, it doesn't stop at the wrist. We need to work with all of the muscles and tendons through the arm. If this is feeling okay, then we make a soft fist, which means we bring the thumb to the middle of the hand, wrap the fingers around, and do the same thing. And you might notice a little more sensation with the fist than when the fingers were just let to hang. And you can do the same thing with the thumb to the center. You can also take the thumb to the outside, and you'll get another whole different stretch in your wrist just by changing the position of the thumb and the fingers. So that's our flexion. Next, we're going to do extension. Make sure you're keeping your shoulder relaxed. So again, option to take the elbow down here. So when we go to extension, we're actually going to start with that soft fist, thumb tucked to the middle, and now we're lifting up. And think of isolating from your wrist. You can think of all the bones I just showed you in Mr. Bones' hand. And we're lifting up as far as we can, like we're touching the back, trying to touch the back of the hand to the forearm. If that's going well, then open up the fingers, and generally you're going to feel more sensation if the fingers are extended when we go into wrist extension. So you can do it both ways. And you can do it with fingers relaxed. You can also spread your fingers apart. I find that that's where I get the most bang for my buck. I feel it all the way up the shoulder, but just checking. One more, and you can hold it for a few breaths and then releasing. Relax down to your side. So if any of these are aggravating it, it's your job to decide, are you still comfortable enough that you're breathing in a way that is calming? Because if your breath starts catching, that means you're probably going beyond your, you're going too far into the movement to those pain bells are going off. So I'm going to take my elbow to my side for this next one. And this one is what we call supine and prone movement. So you might even hold your forearm, and you're going to simply flip your palm up, supine, and flip it down. So you can think of it as a rotation of your wrist, palm up and palm down. I also like to explore this one with the hand open and a fist. And I generally find that if the hand's open and the fingers are spread, I have a little more feeling sensation. I do like to hold the forearm because you can familiarize yourself with the way those muscles are working in your arm as you do this. Back and forth, supine and prone. And then the next one we do, we're going to go back to arm extended, unless, again, if it's causing shoulder pain, then elbows to the side, or you can rest your arm on a bolster or something. But I like to extend, plug into the shoulder blade, and this is our radial and ulnar movement. So your pinky finger side of your hand is going to come towards the inner wrist, and then release that, and then thumb side of your hand, as best you can, bring it towards the outer wrist. And I try to imagine I have a flat book in my hand so my hand doesn't close up. You want to try to keep the hand open and go side to side with that resting point, that neutral point in the middle. And feeling those, but again, you could support your arm, and sometimes in supporting it, you're feeling the muscles and the bones move. And then lastly, take that down. And we're going to tuck the thumb into the center of the palm, wrap the fingers around, and make some full circles. When we make the full circles, notice what will often happen is now that forearm is moving. So hold the forearm, we'll take it down to the side, and see if you can really isolate the movement into your wrist. So it's not your arm. You know, I could do a whole little arm dance here. I want to just isolate the wrist. If it feels okay, then go into the extension and isolate that full movement in the wrist. Gently tucking the thumb across, and you can switch the direction of the rotation. Nice. All right. And so in the last video with the hand, we did what's called the Varma Points, which are energetic points in the Ayurvedic medicine. This one's fairly simple. We just have Manibandha, which is the wrist itself. So I'm going to have you be both the giver and the receiver. Your opposite hand will come in and just massage your wrist. Manibandha is very important with any type of hand pain. It's a good place to stimulate, and you can just press into the wrist and release. The other thing that if you had somebody else do it to you, it would be two-handed, but obviously you're receiving with one hand is, remember when we were kids and we'd do like the burn the wrist type of thing? That actually can feel good. You can make circles around your wrist, create some heat in that Marma point. And this is a really good point to stimulate to calm the nervous system. So it has a lot to do with our psychological body too. So just holding your wrist perhaps and putting a little bit of pressure on it. Just holding it still. You can do that too, letting your fingers curl in. And then we'll let that go, let it come down. And take both palms up, relax the wrist, just feel the two sides. So always pausing to let your brain communicate and to see and feel any differences in the two wrists, the two hands, the two arms even, perhaps the shoulders. And then we'll do those same movements for the right wrist. So we start by extending the right arm if it's available, but plugging the arm bone into the shoulder, like you want to come back into the shoulder socket, soften your shoulder down. We go into flexion first. So we'll start with the fingers spread but soft, and bring the palm of the hand towards the bottom of the forearm as far as you can go comfortably, and then just release. Let the hand just kind of naturally pop back up. And be aware, because I just noticed I was doing this and I felt this big shooting pain in the left side of my neck. Don't ask why, just notice. They're all related somehow or other. We can't decompartmentalize our body. It's a mistake we made when I say things like isolate the movement. You're isolating the movement, but you're not separating the experience. Like only your wrist feels this, right? And then we'll do one more there, and then if it feels okay, you're gonna make the soft fist and do the same thing. And you can do the fist with both the thumb to the inside of the fingers and to the outside, and you might have a little bit different experience with both of those. So if you do have a tendonitis, just checking to see that your breath is still smooth and you're comfortable. You want to stay calm as we're doing this. And also what you're saying to yourself. Those are all potential alarms. So we know that pain is not the only alarm, the physical sensation of pain. And other alarms that can go off are how we breathe and what we say to ourselves. So do you feel safe? Are you comfortable? And then we're going to relax that, and we'll go the opposite way. So now we're going to go into extension. So relax your fingers and make that soft fist and lift up. So we start with the fist. It's usually a little bit less sensational. If you want to hold your arm at any point, just so I can see the muscles in my forearm moving, I like that. But you can just go up, remembering that the key here is we're trying to go beyond our normal range of motion, which if you do a lot of yoga, normal range of motion, we have to have a lot of wrist flexion extension, because we do a lot of weight bearing in that position. And you can switch thumb to the outside of the fingers. So that's our flexion and extension. We'll drop the elbow down to the side for this next one, and you can even hold your forearm. We're going to go flip the palm up, that's your supine, and flip the palm down. So it can be the whole forearm flipping, but I'm really trying to kind of hold the forearm so that I feel more of the wrist turning. Think of turning your wrist, even if there's less mobility. Turn the wrist. You can even lead with your thumb. Your thumb goes back and your thumb goes down. And you can feel those muscles in your forearm. And we'll take that arm back into extension, plug the upper arm bone into the shoulder socket, like you can feel your shoulder blade, all the muscles around your shoulder blade all holding the arm. And then we are going to flip the palm up. You can hold your forearm if you'd like. And we bring the pinky finger towards the wrist without dumping it down. So keep the palm facing up like you're holding a book or a tray in your hand. And then release. And then thumb towards the outer edge of the wrist. Thumb finger, thumb. And going side to side. So that's our radial movement and our ulnar movement, back and forth. Keep that palm spread, fingers out. And then drop that down and make a soft fist again. Thumb can be to the center of the palm if that feels okay. And make some circles, but watch that it's not, we'll start down here. Make sure your whole arm's not moving. Like if your forearm's flipping up, you're actually moving from your elbow too. So you want to isolate that, hold your arm, make wrist circles. So isolating that movement in the wrist as much as you can. If you want to take the arm out into extension and do it, you'll tend to feel a little bit more. Really slow. Notice where you try to skip out on the movement. And this side I get a lot of cracks, so that reminds me to tell you that sounds coming out of the joints is totally normal. It is not in any way indicative of pain. In fact, in yoga we say that's your vata escaping your body, your wind energy. That's all good. But it doesn't mean there's pain in that joint. And you can go both directions, and then drop that down. We'll do our massage of the Manibandha wrist Marma point. So think of this is a place, right, where your bones, we saw in Mr. Bones, your bones come together. We've got lots of ligaments and tendons in there, so that's all on the physical level. But this is also balancing for the mental, emotional body to massage your wrist. You could do that circle thing, like you're doing a little bit of that burn on the wrist. Just exploring that area of wrist. Keep your hand relaxed. And one hand is giving and the other is receiving. That's a whole thing too for ourselves, to be able to both give and receive. Really important. And then we've got just a few last ones with both hands. And these are more stretchy. So we did the Marma point therapy there. So these are a little bit longer holds on the stretches. And the first one we do, I call chicken wings. You're going to take the backs of the hands to the sides of your body and start all the way down by your hips, palms facing out, and begin to slide your hands up towards your armpits to where you feel like you can still relax that weight of the elbows, the upper arms, and the shoulders down, and just hang out there. If for any reason this does not work, it's too much for you, then you can take the backs of the hands together, point the fingers down, and let the elbows fall. So this is another way to do this one. I just like to use the sides of the body. I tend to find that I hold my shoulders up with this one, and I want to relax my shoulders down. So try the chicken wings on. If it doesn't work, then you can go to the other one. And we're just feeling, we're feeling our wrists stretch. So notice how there's compression in the front of the wrists, and there's tension, what we call tension or stretching, in the back of the wrists. Just the right amount. Just letting the weight of the arm bones fall. Keep your head and neck in a nice, comfortable position. You can breathe into the compression in the front of the wrists, or that space in the back of the wrist. Soften your fingers, completely relaxed. One more breath there. And then we'll take that out, and we're going to do a held stretch with the extension. So that comes with palms together. So it's a counter pose, really. And you're going to take your palms together. I like to point my fingers down. There's many different ways to do this. But notice we're not weight bearing. A lot of times we'd have you go into weight. I don't like to weight bearing because now you can really control how much you want, how much pressure. And you're going to begin to draw the heels of the hands up towards your heart center. And let your elbows come out to the sides. And as you're doing that, just slightly spread your fingers and push the palms of the hands together just a little bit. You'll feel more stretching through the wrists. So take them into full extension. If you know that you have just one hand you want to work, I'm having you do both right here, right? The other way to do this is to take just that one hand up, take the opposite hand, and put just a little bit of weight in it. So that's one way to use weight bearing without putting your full body weight into it. So we could do one hand at a time stretch. For today, I'm having you do both, and you might notice one might be tighter or looser than the other, or more forgiving. And we'll release that. Last one we do, take your fingers into a nice little basket, and then take your elbows to your sides, keep your forearms still, and just make some figure 8 shapes with your wrists. And you might slightly squeeze your fingers if that feels good. Just put a little bit of compression in there, a little bit of squeeze. Pick one direction and go that full route like you're drawing infinity signs. So I'm not using my elbows to make this motion. We can groove out later. I'm really thinking of moving my wrists in the figure 8 pattern. And just to show you how this is also stimulating your brain, go ahead and switch directions. Usually there's that momentary, your brain has to think, right? It kind of flops for a minute and then goes, okay, switch directions. So just going both directions, but also finding that full wrist movement through these figure 8s. One hand supporting the other. That's it. That is our wrist practice for today. I hope you got to do hand and wrist with me today, because if you did, I know my hands feel like 10 pounds heavier now. Tell me what yours feel like if you did this or both practices. And thanks for joining me. Peace, joy, love, and light. If you want to catch my live streams, remember I do somatic yoga and yoga therapy live streams every Monday and Wednesday at 8 a.m. And if you can't be there at 8 a.m., there's recordings later in the day for you. That's it.